Hello, friends, and welcome to Monday's edition of the Kings of Anglia podcast. It is a happy Monday. Town won at Fleetwood 2-0 at the weekend, so it's a happy Monday for the first time in a couple of weeks. Always happy when I'm joined by Andy, the Hutchmeister, Hutch Hogan, Warren, Mark Heath here, your host. Just the two of us today, Hutchie. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm all right. Just the two of us. Back to lockdown days again.
The Hutch and Heath connection. Stay tuned, friends. You just showed me, Hutch, you've got a new addition to the shirt collection. You've got... How do you pronounce it?
Venezia.
Venezia FC. Venice FC, for those of you who don't know. It's a very strong shirt just over Hutchie's right-hand shoulder with a golden lion as the crest, which is extremely impressive. But now you've added that to your collection, Hutchie, what happens with that? What do you do with that? Does it just hang there for a little bit? Do you
it just joins the rest, mate. There's nothing. Nothing happens with them. I don't wear any of them.
Do you trade in them? I know. I
Yeah.
remember you telling me when Messi signed for PSG, you were getting Messi shirts and tickets and that kind of stuff. You're a bit of a entrepreneur, baller, hustler in that respect.
Yeah.
So
I think entrepreneurs generous.
But is that where do you kind of sell them on and kind of trade in them?
Yeah. But I think that Venezia one will hang around and remain in the collection. But yeah, buy sell. Always
Super.
Moving, always fluid, always available.
You've got to do something to fund your lavish lifestyle, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Keep the wife in the custom to which she's become accustomed. You're going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting today, old Hutchie, because obviously you were at the game. You were at Fleetwood. Stewie, your partner in crime, was there too. An excellent picture, by the way, if you're both looking like Dorman, taken by Mike Turbot, about to present yourself to Fleetwood press area. Yeah, and obviously Roscoe wasn't there. I wasn't there. I had the first weekend off I've had in 4 months, so I've not really connected, friend. So the lifting is going to be very much on your broad and rather muscular shoulders this morning. First point of order, friend, that we've got to address: £1 million picks, because Town won 2-0. Like I say, you've been betting forlornly and without product on Sam Morsey scoring for several weeks as part of your weekly betting bits. And as I understand it, though, and I've only listened to half of you and Stu, your pod from last week, but I understand from the KOA Army, you negated to bet or indeed mention £1 million picks on said pod. So now Morsey's scored, one has to wonder where we stand on this. How would you like to address this before we get into the game?
I'm going to leave this in your court, or perhaps the listeners' court. You won't find £1 million picks discussed in the other half of that podcast if you indeed finish it, because I forgot about it again. However, all I'll say is that I believe I've made it very clear that Morsey bet was going on every match.
But now we have to kind of retrospectively. I mean, were you betting us the same amount every week?
Yeah, 50 grand every time.
So what would that have returned had you
325?
325.
It's up to you. Look,
I mean, it seems reasonable to me. It's like someone who plays the same lottery numbers every week. You don't have to say you're doing every Saturday, do you, to do it? You had said you were going to keep betting on it until it happened. So that seems reasonable to me. I'm going to allow it. Maybe we should ask the KOA Army what they think. But I'm in a good mood this Monday morning. Town have won. I've had a few days off. And you've got a lovely Venice shirt. So all things looking bright for me. Should we talk about the game itself, Hutchie? Obviously, we know your boy Morsey scored. Caden Jackson continuing his resurgence, got the second and soldered the game away, as they say in America. Your thoughts on the game? Because from watching your guys chat after the game, although Town played well, and I've seen some very nice one-touch football being stroked around the pig of a pitch, trademark Stuart Watson, it maybe wasn't as impressive if they've been in recent games would have only emerged with draws. But in this case, they got the goals that they've been struggling to get. So what did you make of it, Hutchie?
I think, like you say you haven't seen the game, but that's a pretty fair fair summary of it, I'd say. It's the result that they should have got in both of the previous two games, really. It's what they should have done against Cheltenham. It's what they should have done against Morecambe, but they were just able to do it this time. They had the better of the ball, the better of the chances. Fleetwood didn't offer very much at all. I was disappointed with what I saw from them. And Ipswich were able to get it done in the second half. I don't think they were as good as they had been in those previous games, but they were by far the better team, and justly came away with 3 points. But I don't know. It just makes me feel I feel so frustrated about those two still, about the Cheltenham and the Morecambe games, because they could be 4 points better off in this chase for the playoffs. But they did enough this time. It's a very solid victory.
What did you make of the team, Hutch? There's always a talking point around the team and who plays particularly up top. It was Joe Pigott from Out of the Wilderness this time, starting along with Caden Jackson, who obviously has been resurgent. And the other talking point, I guess, was Selina playing in a deeper midfield role than we've seen him before. So what did you make of the team, and how did it work in practice?
But I was both surprised and not with the way the forward line was picked, because I think we have to be prepared to be surprised a bit at the moment. If all of we talk about the team in various different forms in the lead up to the games, and none of us came up with Joe Pigott and Caden Jackson with Connor Chaplin as the front three, but that's what Kieran McKenna went with, and we've seen him use all of them before, so it's not a huge surprise. Selina in midfield was a bit of a surprise. We talk about a bit more about him in a minute, but he has played there previously for Swansea and Dijon, so it's not completely unfamiliar to him. But again, he wasn't one that we were kind of factoring into our equation. So surprised, but I'm not shocked to be surprised, if that makes sense. I'm prepared for it. I'm ready. I'm not. It's not going to knock me back with these team sheets.
You're fairly unflappable anyway, friend. So, I think if you suddenly started one like Teti Yenge up front or Tyree Simpson, you'd have probably remained unflappable. Talk to me about the dynamics of it, though. Because obviously football's all about finding the right blends and partnerships and stuff. We know Morsey and Evans are a set-in-stone partnership when both are available in centre mid. Without one of them around, Town generally drop off, and clearly Backington and Carroll have been replacing Evans to date. How did that work with Selina and Morsey in midfield? Because that must have, Selina's obviously someone who wants to get forward. Did that mean then Morsey was having to hang back a bit more than he would?
Yeah, a little.
Yeah,
a little. He didn't. I don't think he didn't suddenly become kind of an anchor that didn't leave his own half or anything like that. He still was up and involved in the play. Saw plenty of the ball in the first half. Sam Morsey on the ball in that first half in particular was outstanding. His position on the ball and the way he used it was really good. Obviously, he had to take on a little bit more in terms of like the robust side of the midfield, because we know that Bersant Selina is a player that wants the ball and he wants it in advanced areas. So it did affect Morsey a little bit. Selina, they looked really, really comfortable in midfield in terms of possession. They knocked the ball between the two of them a lot. They kept it really well, but I think you could see that Selina wasn't able to attack the box in the way that we want him to from that role. But it did mean that Ipswich kept the ball really, really nicely.
What have you made of now 13 games into the McKenna era? We know one of the first things he said was, I want my teams to dominate games, dominate the ball. And they have largely done that possession-wise. What have you made of the way they're playing football now compared to maybe the days of Paul Cook? Is it a marked difference, would you say?
I think an expression that Stu used to use a lot in regard to Paul Lambert's team, and they had the ball a lot. Paul Lambert's team had a lot of the ball, but it was possession without a purpose. But I think this team is possession with a purpose. They have the ball and want. I'm not going to say Paul Lambert's team didn't want to do something with it. Of course they did. But they have the ball and they are able to do something with it. They know what they're trying to do. They're more intense with it. It's not as passive. I think Paul Lambert's possession, a lot of it was rolling it around the back four as it was at the time. There's not so much of that. I think the possession comes higher up the pitch in this team, either by a a defender in that 3. And I think the angles on the pitch, that the right wing back and the left wing back being a bit more advanced, mean that there's those balls for the defenders to play to get forward more, or a defender steps out and gets it into Morsey or Evans or Selena, whoever's in there. And that possession is higher up the pitch, which just makes it that bit more intense than you looked at the possession stats under Paul Lambert and they were high. And it was because the goalkeeper had been rolling it to fullbacks and across the back 4 and then into midfield, back out again into defences. There's none of that. You feel like they've got the ball for a reason and are kind of operating in the opposition's half, which if you're going to have the ball and dominate the ball, you want to do it in a good area, don't you?
Yeah, it seems to me a strange thing to say, but it's like constant motion from what I've seen. There's kind of sort of always an out, always a ball on, and it tends to be those shorter kind of passes, but the angles and that kind of stuff. And I know McKenna has said that one of the things that he said to the players is, "We never want you walking," which again seems like an odd thing to say about a football player who clearly tends to be perpetual motion. But is it noticeable from that point of view as well?
Yeah, it's all just that bit higher tempo. In terms of the team kind of rolls from side rather than kind of passing the ball and slowly moving from side. The whole team kind of rolls. So Burns, the fullbacks are a big part of this. So you've got the right wing back and the left wing back, and the whole team kind of rotates. So if they're kind of trying to attack down the right side, you see Wes Burns in this really advanced role. And then if you look up, you'd look at the team and you might think actually they're playing a back 4, because at that point, Janoy Donatian moves over to a more traditional right back area, and the 2 centre backs, Wolfenden and Edmondson, come over a bit more, and Thompson comes over, and it's all rolled that way to kind of attack down the right. And if they're attacking down the left, not so much this way actually, because Burns still is advanced, but it kind of rolls back again. So the whole axis of the team and angles is a good way to look at it. I think there's passes are on, and it's just getting that final connection to make it work in the final third that it isn't completely there, but it does feel like it's all with a purpose and all planned and all thought out a bit more, and it's good to watch. They're ever so comfortable.
Yeah. If you're not watching on video, that was a beautiful visual aspect of Hutchie kind of rolling to indicate the way the team moves, which is excellent. That was Talking Tactics with Mark Heath and Andy Warren. In terms of the final connection, Hutchie, obviously that's the strikers that's been lacking. Pigott was your man this game. How do you think he did? Because McKenna said after the game that it was probably the best performance he'd had, in his opinion. Would you agree with that? What did you make of Joe?
I don't know if I'd go as far as saying it was the best I've seen Joe Pigott play, but maybe it is in the games that McKenna's been in charge of. I thought he did well. I had a bit of feedback on the player ratings, because I had him a bit lower than some of the others in the team. But if the words that I'd written were all quite complimentary, is that the link play was good. He had, particularly in the first half, he was obviously only on for part of the second, but dropping deep and moving the ball wide. He had some good moments down the right-hand side of the box where he got away. But I don't know. I think he looked frustrated when he came off, and that's all because he had one really big chance, and he's hit the face of the post. It looked, when it left his foot from the angle that we were watching at, which by the way, the entire game was spent like that, because the sun was direct in our eyes for the whole game. So got a very strong arm now. That's had it up like that for the whole game. When it left his foot, it looked like it was in, because he'd found the right area of the goal. I think the goalkeeper given him a nice little area to look for. And look for all the world like he was going to score. And when it kind of bounced away off the post, I was quite shocked. And I think for that reason, he'll probably be frustrated coming off the pitch, because what he really needs is a goal. I appreciate all the good kind of build up work that he does, and I think that was possibly more sort of possible for him to do that because Selena was that bit deeper. I don't know if that may potentially kind of opened up some areas for him to drop into and have a bit more room to work potentially, which is obviously a good thing if you're able to get Joe Pigott doing that. But he just needs a goal. We'll get on to Lincoln in a minute, but if he doesn't start again after kind of that kind of feedback from both from Kieran McKenna and from Sam Morsey, actually, who said the same thing about Joe Pigott, that would leave me scratching my head a little bit. But that man just needs to score a goal.
Talk to me again about dynamics then. For those of people who've not seen the game, obviously there'll be a lot of people listening to the pod who haven't seen the game, have seen the highlights maybe. How does that work then with Pigott and Jackson and Chaplin? Is Pigott on his own up top?
Yeah, you can either. We see slightly different variations of this. I think in general we call Kieran McKenna's system a 3-4-3, don't we? I think you could, if you really wanted to, at times call it a 3-4-2-1, which is how it looks when Chaplin and Selina play. This time, with the kind of formation that was there, the personnel, that was there this time, it's probably more of a flat 3-4-3. So Pigott in the middle, Jackson left, Chaplin right, but Chaplin's got a touch of the Alan Judges about him in that he wanders a little bit, and that's absolutely fine, because I don't think you necessarily need Chaplin to supply the width, particularly from the right side, because you've got Burns, who is very naturally looking to do that anyway. So maybe Chaplin's that little bit more of a wanderer, which at times you could see him in as a number 10 almost behind Jackson and Pigott. But for me, it looked more sort of a flat front three. So you've got Jackson, who was squared up with Toto and Ciala for most of the afternoon, kind of attacking him, trying to attack him one-on-one. And then you've got Pigott as the kind of the pivot man in the middle, who was dropping deep. And if he drops deep, then you can get Chaplin and Jackson, maybe try and get beyond him, get a bit tighter. But something Pigott did quite well was drop deep, get the ball, and try and turn out of trouble and get the ball wide to Burns on the right. So there's a definite pattern to what they're trying to do. And those parts of the game, Joe Pigott did pretty well. But I don't know, for me, I really appreciate all that work that he does. It's good, and he is a good touch player. But I just want that bit more intensity in the box from my central striker. And maybe not everybody feels the same about what they want from a team when they're watching it. But for me, I just want him to score a goal and see what that does for him, because it's been a while.
A long time. October, I believe, off the top of my head, was the last time he scored. Goalless now, I think in 19 it would be. What about the rest of the players on the pitch? Hutchie, I know Morsey was your man of the match. Clearly, the back four, we barely need to mention these days, because they're as solid as a rock. 9 clean sheets in 13 games. But you did mention, when we spoke last week, Thompson, worried about him. I think it was Stu actually said that Thompson is starting to stray into that Stuart Watson amber zone. Worried about his kind of being able to play numerous games on the bounce. How did he look? Was he okay at Fleetwood?
He's fine. Yeah, he was fine. Not nothing more, nothing less. He was part of a defensively. I think he's pretty solid. He's part of that back line that's obviously doing really well at the moment. I think it's in many ways it's an unfair comparison, because obviously on the one side we're talking about a right winger playing as a right wing back, and on the other in Wes Burns, and then on the other side we've got a left back who I think Dominic Thompson's a left back. I'm pretty happy to say that he's a left back, but he's being asked to play kind of a left wing back. So the balance isn't quite there in what they're able to do. Wes Burns is probably highlights that he's a bit of a special case in terms of what he's actually able to do on that right side. And the comparison's always going to be between the two. And I don't think Thompson comes out of that hugely favourably. But in terms of what he actually does, you can question his involvement in the goal at Morecambe a week ago. But in terms of his actual play, I think he's absolutely fine. He's decent on the ball. He gets the ball inside to Morsey quite a lot. He's always available for Edmondson, which I think is quite important, because Edmondson's playing on his wrong foot over there. So he's able to be available to him, and he gets forward enough without he's not going to get the ball. You're not getting Dominic Thompson the ball, and you're not expecting him to knock the ball past a man and beat him necessarily, which is what obviously we look to Burns to do. So I think he's absolutely fine. It's just not quite got the same kind of oomph and thrust that you're getting down the right side, which I think is why he comes out of some comparisons unfavourably at times. But all in all, I think he's done. I think he's done okay.
He's fine.
He's fine.
We should also mention before we move on, of course, Caden Jackson. The resurgence continues from the frozen, frigid wastelands of almost being on his way out the door at Town, very much an afterthought, to now scoring the goal that wrapped up the game. Hutchie, what did you make of Caden on Saturday's showing?
Great finish, really good.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah,
yeah, really picked his spot and just really calmly slotted that in from Selena's pass. Probably worth talking about the change that McKenna made to enable these goals to happen at some point. But yeah, I thought Jackson did okay. He was having I think he was quite enjoying his battle with Toto. They had a few moments where they just grinned at each other, and there was a time where it looked to me like Jackson was telling Toto what he was going to do to him, like kind of pointing to areas on the pitch, and that's what it looked like to me from like several yards away, obviously. But it looked like he was kind of pointing out, actually, that area in behind you, Toto. You need to watch out, mate, because you know how quick I am. But he did okay. This wasn't the Burton game in any stretch of the imagination for Caden Jackson, but and they weren't able to kind of spring him away on too many occasions. But he did okay, and the goal is obviously a really good one, which kind of puts an exclamation mark on the end of his afternoon.
Yeah, great ball from Selena, great finish from Jackson. Should we talk about that change then? Because obviously we talked about what the team was from the start, but it really was that kind of change that then saw the goals come. So Pigott came off, Backinson came on, and on you go, Hutchie. Tell us.
Yeah. Well, on the face of that, sort of watching from afar, if you see a defensive central midfielder come on for the number 9 at 0-0, you could argue that's fairly negative, but it wasn't, because Backinson coming on allowed Morsey to move up, and Morsey moving up allowed Selena to move up, and that put those two players in sort of more comfortable roles for them. That put Morsey back in the marauding Morsey that we have come to enjoy over the last couple of months, and it put Bersent Selena in the more advanced kind of 10 left side, 10-ish, 10.5. I'd call Selena in that, because he normally, I think he was supposed to be playing kind of wide, and but he obviously drops into pockets and tries to thread, and both of those two were involved in the first goal. Selena working that wide, and then Morsey meeting Burns' cross to score the exact kind of goal that someone like Sam Morsey should be scoring, sort of holding your run, finding space in the box, being picked out and sweeping it home. Morsey was brilliant in this game, and the goal obviously punctuated that. And then obviously, as you've said, Selena's got into a really nice little position there to thread Jackson in for the second. So that change kind of unlocked two players that were on the pitch. So yeah, a very positive one when on the face of it, the actual personnel switch is fairly negative.
That's something else we're not really used to, isn't it, at Town? Substitutions actually changing things and making things better. Historically, generally they've either been left too late or they've not really worked as they should. So another tick there in McKenna's rapidly filling up check sheet of things that he's changing at Town. We should also mention, actually, before we move on from this game, of course, the narrative, #narrative there was. You already mentioned Toto, Inciala, Ellis Harrison as well. What was that like? Were there many battles with Toto? I was listening to you on the pod last week. The concept of playing Norwood to wind Toto up, I was very much on board for. Obviously didn't happen, but was there any coming together? Was there any, you said there was obviously chats between Caden and Toto. Anything else to mention on those two?
That's about the long and short of it, really. That apart from sort of within probably 25 seconds of the game kicking off, Toto had thrown Dominic Thompson basically into the front row of the Ipswich fans. But Toto was fine. He got through the game well enough, and Ellis Harrison barely had a kick. The Ipswich defence barely gave him anything at all. So in terms of that narrative, there really wasn't any. Disappointing.
We're going to have to come up with a name for the Town defence. I'm saying Blue Wall as it stands. That's the working title. You know, American football, there's famous defenses, as they say over there, the purple people eaters of the Minnesota Vikings and the orange crush of the Denver Broncos. We need a name for Town, because they're certainly working towards all these shutouts they're getting, Hutchie. Defense wins championships. So let's think of a name. I'm working title Blue Wall. Just before we move on, Hutchie, by way of drawing a line under Fleetwood, how good of a win was this? Because on paper, Fleetwood obviously struggling towards the foot of the table, but they had been in decent form. And they've beaten Rotherham. They've scored 3 goals. I think Plymouth, Portsmouth as well. They've put 3 past both of those sides. And it's never an easy place to go, especially on a pitch like that. So in terms of ranking it as a win, this was a decent win, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a decent win. It's I not one to go massively overboard about, because I think if they're going to get to where they want to go, there's going to be some much bigger wins than this required. But just they overcame everything that they needed to. The pitch was horrible. It was really bad. After the game, it was a terrible pitch with just mud patches, exposed mud patches everywhere. And as we were finishing off our work after the game, just sat in the stand, those kind of UV light things that they roll out, the big things they roll out. They had 2 of them, and they'd kind of picked these 2 spots sort of on the pitch to kind of work on, and you kind of thought it's going to need a bit more than that, lads. This isn't going to fix anything overnight. So they overcame that, and that, I think that makes it a really good win. And they, just the fact that they gave Fleetwood clearly a dangerous team, an out of form, but kind of in terms of wins, but a team that has caused other teams trouble. The Ipswich weren't in trouble in this game, and that's nice that they just went about it their own way, got the job done, answered a couple of questions in that there was a point in this game where I really thought it was going to go the same way as the previous 2, and I guess that's where the pleasure comes from in it, in that they were able to kind of overcome something they weren't able to in the previous 10 days. So a good win.
A good win. There we go. 2-0 at Fleetwood. Town do the business. What we hoped for, what we expected. But there we go. We move on. Before we do move on, Hutchie, any tales from the road? Clearly, Fleetwood, a long road trip with your partner in crime, Stuart Watson. When you weren't here last week, he took great delight in telling us of his win at Crazy Golf. Obviously against yourself, a world-ranked crazy golfer. He was very, very proud of himself.
He played well. He should be.
Anything to report? Anything you got up to this time on your Jolly Boys trip to Fleetwood?
That is the third time that Stu and I have been to Fleetwood together, and I still haven't seen the sea. I haven't seen any evidence of it being on the coast. That's disappointing. I'm going to be really boring and say no. It was strictly business. Drove up on Saturday morning. Just drove to the northwest, went to work. Stu had a pasty.
Nice.
I bought a sandwich. It's good times. Went to work. Saw Michael Carrick.
Of course, yeah.
Stands. Then we stayed the night in Warrington. Got woken up at 2 a.m. by some very, very enthusiastic people knocking on people's doors.
Lovely.
In the Holiday Inn. Got 15 minutes down the road and realised I'd left my glasses in the hotel room. Went back to Warrington again. Went home. What do you reckon? Sound good? Do you feel like you've missed out?
What I'd say is, we always get people say, God, you're so lucky to cover football for a living. And when you tell stories like that, you realise just how
lucky we are, yeah.
Yeah, non-glamorous, what a general kind of slog it is. Clearly, being at games is a privilege and all that kind of stuff. But the stuff that people don't see, all the travel and as you say, staying in these places is far from glamorous, isn't it? But thank you, Hutchie. An excellent little précis. Sorry, mate. What were you going to say?
We bumped into lots of members of the KOA army. I'll give you, that was a highlight. As you previously, my favourite Turbo Sailor. Had a nice chat about him, who has also been backing Sam Morsey to score goals with actual money rather than pretend millions. So
Yeah.
Mike's a happy man. We saw Harvey Davis, John Watson, Darren. We saw, bumped into
Excellent.
lots of people. That was very nice.
While you were on your way back from Fleetwood, Hutchie, do you know what I was doing? As I say, it's my first Sunday off in 4 months. So I took myself off. I took myself and the wife off to watch The Batman.
Yeah, good.
Which, yeah, I know people like it when we talk about TV and things that people are watching. So pray silence, please. I'll give you a short The Batman review from Heath before we get on to Lincoln. I was kind of trepidatious going into it, Hutchie, I must say, because Robert Pattinson, Batman, not an obvious choice. I guess I just see him as the kind of floppy-haired vampire one from the Twilight saga. And also, obviously, it's not a Nolan Batman, which we've got used to. But I must say, it was bloody brilliant. I really, really, really liked it. I don't know if it's because I went in with slightly lower expectations, but it was great. Start with the drawbacks. It's way too long, Hutchie.
How long?
It's almost 3 hours long.
Oh, that is long.
And I reckon you could comfortably cut out 30 to 45 minutes of it. And with it being that long, you need to plan how you're going to approach that. As you're just hydrating up there. You don't want to do too much of that before you go in. Clearly, you don't want to miss too much of it. So it's too long, but generally it is very, very, very good. Pattinson is strong, I would say, as Batman. It's kind of early in Batman's journey, so he's like 2 years into him being the Dark Knight. So he's a bit unsure of himself and not really the polished kind of Christian Bale-esque Batman that we're used to. So there's quite a lot of him struggling with the concept of what he's doing and all that kind of stuff. There's not a lot of him being Bruce Wayne, I must say. It's mostly him being the Cape Crusader. But the way it's shot, mate, unbelievable. There's always like an intro bit where you see Batman for the first time.
Yeah.
Before he hands someone their rear end in combat.
Yeah.
That is probably the coolest they've ever done it, I think. The way they set that up. Some beautiful action shots. They end up the kind of climactic, without giving any spoilers, it ends up at Gotham Square Garden, Hutchie. Clearly, Madison Square Garden, which they end up flooding in this kind of final battle scene, which is incredible. I would highly recommend it. I'm gonna go. Nothing will ever surpass The Dark Knight, I don't think, as a Batman film, and maybe as a film, full stop. Certainly top 5 for me.
Yeah.
But I would say that is as good a Batman film as I've seen, other than The Dark Knight.
What villains are we talking about
there's
here?
Bloody loads, mate. There's the Riddler is the main one, who is again scarily psychopathic guy.
Not Jim Carrey.
Definitely not Jim Carrey. Does some very nasty things to some very unfortunate people, particularly one death involving a cage and some rats around someone's face. So he's very good. There's also the Penguin, who is Colin Farrell, looking unlike Colin Farrell you've ever seen him before. Clearly a lot of prosthetics and weight has been put on him. And also there's the teaser at the end, which I won't give away, of another villain who we may have seen before and who you may or may not think should ever really be featured in Batman again after one particular iconic turn. So that kind of gives
I know who you're talking about, Mark. I'm not going to say it, but I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just really good. If a bit too long. Zoe Kravitz is in it as Catwoman. And there is one particularly amazing car chase scene with a kind of earlier version of the Batmobile, which again ends with what I can see being an iconic shot from the Batman kind of series of films. So I'd highly recommend it. As I say, don't hydrate too much in the pre-game. Certainly don't get on the beer pre-game. Plan your toilet breaks unless you've got a considerably large bladder. Like
I think I'd be all right. Did you need a break?
Watson,
my word, Stuart Watson. he'd probably miss a good half hour of this. The amount of toilet breaks that man needs is unbelievable.
This tiny bladder, maybe not one for him. I would say though, I think it's one of these films that needs to be seen at the cinema. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It kind of, because of the way it's shot, it's very dark. It's pretty much always raining, and the soundtrack's really important as well. It kind of kind of become enveloped in the world, kind of washes over you as you're sitting there. And I don't think you'd probably get the same effect seeing that on TV at home, not how big your telly is. So highly recommend going to see it at the cinema.
Nice.
I was very impressed with it. Let me know what you think, KOA Army. A lot of people have come at me saying, without having seen it, Patterson's dreadful choice for Batman, again, because of the Twilight thing. But I was very impressed. I thought he did really well. And I'm looking forward to the next few in this new era of the Batman films. Right, Hutchie, that's film 2022, excuse me, with Mark Heath doing my best
I
Barry
like
Norman. Then what comes next in terms of town, obviously, Hutchie, is Lincoln tomorrow night in one of the original pack out Portman Road games. Tuesday night, maybe not quite the same vibe as it would have been, but still going to be a big crowd there. We're talking 25,000 plus, I think I last saw.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you make of this one on the face of it? Another home game against a team struggling towards the bottom of the table, another must win or should win game. But they had a great result of the weekend, didn't they? Out of the blue and helping Town out, beating Sheffield Wednesday 3-1. So how are you feeling heading into this one, Hutchie?
Yeah, got to win it. It's one that you look at on the list and you feel like they've got to win. They've got to win their home games if they're going to get to where they want to go. Always fairly decent games between Ipswich and Lincoln. There's always something to talk about from them, and yes, there'll be a big crowd for this one. It's a shame this is being played on a Tuesday night rather than on I think it was New Year's Day. It was meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a few different faces in there for Lincoln than what we've seen previously. They've got John Marquis up front, who was formerly of Portsmouth, who they've signed. Maguire we've seen before from Sunderland. They've got some players that are good. I like TJ Ayoma, who is either a kind of right-sided centre half or a right back. I quite like him. So it's not going to be an easy game, but we kind of seen in the fairly recent past of Lincoln are a better side than Doncaster, but I think Doncaster had beaten. I want to say they'd beaten Sunderland going into Town's game at Doncaster, and it's kind of a bit took something out of them. I wonder whether Lincoln has beating Sheffield Wednesday, who are one of the informed teams in the league, has maybe taken a little bit out of them. But it's a home game. Ipswich will have plenty of the ball. Lincoln want the ball a bit more than some of the teams they've played recently, but Ipswich will have so much of the ball, and just a case of taking chances again. I think we've seen that Ipswich create chances. We don't really see them kind of frustrated in terms of creating anything. So they'll have loads of the ball. If they can make that possession count, then they'll win the game. And I think they really need to.
Lincoln, obviously, we mentioned that great result of the weekend, which helped Town out, but they had been on a fairly poor run of form before that. They lost at home to Gillingham. They lost at Bolton. No shame there, I guess. They've been beaten at home by Doncaster, which is a worrying result. They hadn't actually won before the weekend since the very start of February, where they won 2-1 at home to Morecambe. So not been on the greatest run. Clearly will be lifted by that result of the weekend. Clearly, actually, we have to mention in terms of hashtag narrative, Town potentially coming face to face with one of the former crown jewels. Certain Edward Bishop is very much on the Lincoln roster now. He didn't play at the weekend, but I think he's been playing fairly regularly for Lincoln this season. Any thoughts about Town potentially facing Teddy?
It'd be interesting to see him back at Portman Road. He got a few little. He didn't get the greatest reception when Town played at Lincoln. Back at Portman Road will be special for him. Obviously, he grew up there and played. I was going to say played so many games there. He didn't play anywhere near as many games as he'd have wanted to, and we'd have wanted him to. But I'll enjoy seeing him play again. But I hope that Ipswich are able to just nullify him like they did at Sincil Bank. He was barely in the game. He started there, barely had a kick, barely noticed him, and the game kind of flew by without much incident for him, much like it did with Ellis Harrison at the weekend. So we know what he can do if he plays and if he's able to get on the ball and run with it and drive towards the box. So there's a threat to be wary of, but they managed to just completely block him out of the previous game, and we've seen him have those games for Ipswich previously, haven't we? We've seen plenty of games where Teddy's been quiet and on the fringes of things. So I wouldn't be completely shocked if the same happened again, to be honest.
We always have to have this chat before a game, Hutchie, about the team. It's becoming kind of redundant because clearly things happen that we just don't expect these days. You would never have said that tip Pigott to start of the weekend. But what, if anything, would you do with the side? You said already Pigott, if he doesn't start again, you wonder what he's got to do to get another start. Give us your thoughts, though. Clearly, this is probably not what's going to happen. But what would you do?
I've got quite a lot of thoughts on it, and I don't know what these thoughts ultimately add up to, because the way that Town got their win at the weekend was by making sure that Sam Morsey could play in a more advanced role and making sure that Bersant Salina could play in more of an advanced role, and that meant that Joe Pigott wasn't on the pitch. I think we could probably all agree that we want to see those players play in those advanced roles, but maybe in a home game, just having Salina on the pitch in that midfield role, it might just naturally be able to get forward a bit more. I don't know, mate. I don't know. I'm lost. My brain's scrambled egg.
On the pod last week, you said that you would play Salina and Chaplin pretty much every game. So if Salina's on the pitch, but maybe not in that kind of more advanced role, are you still happy with that?
Yeah. He's the out of those two. I think I said he's the one. I think it's time that he is playing games and on the pitch. I'm happy with that. Wouldn't. Unchanged. It's not something Kieran McKenna does. It really isn't something Kieran McKenna does, but I'm beginning to kind of lose thought on what he is going to do. The thing that is encouraging is that whatever he does, and we're not talking about this chopping and changing as kind of unnecessary chopping and changing, because it isn't halting Town's rhythm. It's not having any impact on how solid they look at the back. Whatever personnel they go with in the final third of the pitch, they're solid at the back. Whatever personnel he goes with in that final third, they have plenty of the ball and are able to control the midfield and also are able to get the ball wide to varying levels of effect. So I would really struggle with the idea of the kind of Joe Pigott being praised so much for his performance at the weekend and then not getting a second start to prove it. So completely nominally and with no insight at this point whatsoever, I'm just going to say unchanged personnel and just see where that takes us.
Fair enough. How do you think you're feeling if you're Macaulay Ball or James Norwood at the moment?
Just frustrated, and I think the same probably goes for Joe Pigott. I think Caden Jackson is probably the only one of those players who's in kind of a bit of a positive, real positive kind of frame of mind about everything at the moment, because clearly, whether he's playing or not, he's more, even when he's not playing, he's more involved than he was and probably thought he would be at this point had Kieran McKenna not come in and switched things up for him. I don't know. It depends. As it'll be interesting to know how they are feeling, because I think that will tell you a lot about them as people. James Norwood, I know he just looks like the kind of person he wants to play and he wants to score. Macaulay Bonne must be feeling the same, because things were going so well for him, and now he doesn't know whether he's going to be starting games. So it's fascinating. I don't know what he's going to do with the team in that final third of the pitch. I'm going to say unchanged, but nothing would shock me. We haven't even talked about Sonny Aluko.
No,
as being a factor in that.
Yeah, he's kind of out of the odd man out as well, isn't he, at the moment?
Yeah, at times he is. But then the thing that interests me is that players can go from not making the bench to the starting lineup kind of in one move.
Yeah.
Which it kind of traditionally in football, I guess, is the traditional path is not in the squad, play your way onto the bench, good substitute appearance, start. That's kind of the move, but that's not the case. So I'll be when 6:45 ticks around on Tuesday night. I'll be fascinated to see what we're presented with.
Do you think there's just going off on a bit of a tangent, striker-wise, actually? Do you think there's an argument that come the summer or come the start of next season, none of the strikers that are currently at the club will be here?
Yep.
Which is mental, isn't it? When you consider how well Macaulay Bond started the season, how much expectation there was on Joe Pigott when he signed, and obviously Norwood has a good scoring record for Town.
But I could also sit here and Mark and argue for each and every one of them.
Yeah,
why they should be here as well. That's I could argue quite reasonably and quite passionately for all four of them as to why they should also stay. But what I'm absolutely certain of is that won't be Town's core striking four. We won't. Some will go, and there will be new pieces in there. I'm absolutely certain of it. But who they are, I don't know. There's all four of them have got reasons why they could stay, and all four of them have got reasons why they might be potentially elsewhere.
That sounds like a podcast in its own right, Hutchie. The big striker debate.
Well, should we book that in? Should we book that in for like playoffs dependent? We'll book that in for like May the 8th. We'll do that one.
Sounds all right for me. Yeah, whack it on your whiteboard. Chuck it in your think walk. Have you got a £1 million pick, Hutchie, for tomorrow night?
Got loads, mate.
Go for it.
Have I? Right.
I'm giving you the money.
Okay.
I'm saying that's fair. I don't think we need to go to KOA Army on this, because I think the KOA Army are a great bunch of people, and they've heard you. Regular listeners will have heard you say frequently you're betting on Morsey every week from now on. So I think the fact you just negated to mention it, we can let you off, because clearly you would have put that bet on.
Okay. Well, in that case, the pot stands at 1 million. 1.25 million, essentially, with a few quid hanging about as well in loose change, which I might just give to charity.
Nice.
So I'm going to spend £250,000 all in all on this game on 3 separate bets. The first of which is Sam Morsey to score at 5-1.
He's still going with it.
I'm still going. Wins 300 grand. So there's that. The second one is for Joe Pigott to score and Town to win by 2 goals or more. 100 grand on that, wins 525.
Wow.
Then the final £100,000 is on a five-fold accumulator of Portsmouth, Ipswich, MK Dons, Sunderland, and Bolton, all to win. 100 grand on that returns £1.15 million. So all in all, we could be, if all of that happens, in the unlikely event that all of that happens, we're looking at the best part of a £2 million win. And what is left in the pot is now exactly £1 million left after those bets.
If none of them come in, you've still got the cool Millie to fall back on. That's quite a complicated series of bets. But it was Morsey to score, Pigott to score, and Town to win by 2 goals. And then or more. And then basically a bunch of teams to win, including Ipswich.
Yeah, basically all the favourites,
right,
in the Tuesday night games, apart from Plymouth, to win.
There we go. Then we'll see potential for massive returns. Then, as I say, I'm sure the KOA Army will let you off the Morsey thing. Lincoln tomorrow night, then Hutchie, and then a big run of games after that. The kind of 3 that we've been teasing and looking towards against the real kind of playoff rivals. Your podcast last week with Stewie, a sensible and measured approach to the run-in, which you both guaranteed that Town would make the playoffs. That's fair to say, isn't it?
I'm ahead. They're ahead of schedule on my.
You had a draw, didn't you?
I had a draw at Fleetwood, so they're 2 points ahead of schedule on my little list I've got up on my wall here.
But if we can get a result tomorrow night, beat Lincoln, and then go into that run of games, it's on, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it is
right
on.
answer. Yeah.
It's on. I think I still think it's going to be incredibly difficult for them to do it. I really do, and we've thought that for quite some time. But it's on. They've made it. There is something on.
Something else.
So, but they need to beat Lincoln. It's these games are so important. They have to beat Lincoln, and they could. I was about to say that if they do beat Lincoln, and that would be 6 points from the first two games when I only had them down for 4. I've then got them down for draws against Portsmouth and Oxford, but they could really do with not losing those games, particularly Portsmouth. They need to not, at the very least, not lose, because there's some, obviously that has implications in itself. If you give Portsmouth 3 points on you in a game like that, you're just causing yourselves trouble. So they need to at very least avoid defeat to any of those teams, really, to give themselves a chance. But it's on. We've reached the final third of the season, and there's something in play here.
It's all to play for. We're about to find out when the rubber meets the road, as they say, with these big games. Hutch, give us a prediction for tomorrow night. We said Town are going to win. They need to win. They should win. What are you saying?
2-0 to Ipswich, and hopefully Joe Pigott and Sam Morsey scoring goals.
The 2 goals,
because that would be good. That would be good. I'm going to go 2-0 to Ipswich Town. You going 7 or 6?
Probably 4, I reckon. 4-0.
Negative.
You've got to recalibrate, though, haven't you? I know striker scored at the weekend, but you can't be silly about these things. 4-0 will do. 4-0 will do fine. Hutchie, that brings us to the end of this week's podcast, unless you've got anything else to discuss. I wanted to ask you, because I wasn't around, and it would have been the perfect opportunity to ask you. Milan. I know you mentioned going to the San Siro, which is great, and I can't believe you got Mrs. Hutchie to go with you as well. The rest of the trip, mate, Italy's beautiful. Italy's probably my favourite country on earth. I've not been to Milan. Other than the football, how good was it?
It's a lovely city. It's quite quiet, a bit not like deathly quiet, but like it's a calm city. It's really nice. The cathedral in particular is something I've always wanted to see. Duomo, there's a big cathedral in the main square. It's absolutely massive. Can seat 40,000 people in a cathedral. Apparently it's like the second biggest cathedral in behind the. I think they reckon they can't kind of prove it because these places don't have like official capacities, but they reckon it's the second biggest in the world behind St. Peter's in the Vatican in terms of what you can get in there. So you can get 40,000 people you could get in there, and it's amazing. Like we went up on the roof. That was quite fun. You can just literally go and walk up on the roof and get some nice views over the city. Some of the architecture is beautiful. Saw a very famous painting.
Yeah.
Yep. The Last Supper.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Was that it? Because sometimes when you see these famous paintings you've seen only online or on TV, they're either massively impressive or sometimes a little bit underwhelming. What was that one like?
Well, it's not in a frame. It's on a wall. I didn't realise it's on a wall.
Is it huge? Because it's a big
massive.
Yeah.
I didn't really until I'd kind of obviously looked into going to see it. It was I assumed it was just a kind of framed painting, but it's it's on the wall of a building next to a church. But it's massive. Yeah, it's quite good. The spread looks a bit dull, if I'm honest, in terms of what was actually on offer at this supper.
No pizza, joke.
I know, but yeah, that was good. It's in like this climate controlled room now to kind of keep Da Vinci's work nice and proper. So that was.
Are you given a set amount of time with the wonder?
15 minutes of contemplation.
Nice.
Is what you're allotted for your €21.
Are you allowed to take pictures?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll send you one in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good picture. I've seen some pictures, boy. I've seen a lot of Van, as I'm sure you have. You're a man of Amsterdam. You'd have been to Van Gogh, surely.
Yeah. The best one I've ever seen in person, I think, is the Night's Watch at the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. which is incredible, mental. A, it's massive. B, it's one of those pictures you can sit in front of for about an hour and see different things constantly because there's so much detail in it. Yeah, as I say, they're either incredibly impressive generally, or a couple of times I've seen kind of famous paintings by famous artists, and I've been a little bit, so I'm pleased to hear that Last Supper is very much
it
on
was
the,
good.
on the
It was
impressive
good, to
side
be
of things.
fair.
Italian churches as well, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not religious in any way, but they are such impressive buildings. St.
Mm.
Peter's in the Vatican, like you say, there,
Yeah.
crazily large.
Just the detail, like
Yeah,
inside, obviously they're painted beautifully as well. But like on this one, Duomo in Milan, it's like the amount of like individually carved statues on that
yeah,
thing. It's insane. Like, and most of these were built like before we're not talking about cranes and stuff here. We're not talking about like serious
it's mad,
like
isn't it?
electric powered cranes. Like
Yeah.
it's absolutely ridiculous. This one is finished. Unlike the one in Barcelona, they could do with sorting themselves out and get that one done. But yeah, I would thoroughly recommend it. It's a nice food as well. Yeah, all in all, it's a nice city. I think we were there for 2 nights, 1 full day and one like 3/4 length day, and that was a good amount of time.
So Milan gets the Hutchie seal of approval.
Yeah,
Where's next on the Hutchie hit list?
Disneyland Paris.
Oh, nice. That's a family
Yeah,
trip.
yeah, that's in like 3 weeks. 3 weeks
Amazing.
to 3 weeks today.
Yeah, we've both got some trips to look forward to, boy, haven't we?
Oh yeah, we
Oh,
travel,
yes.
boy.
We do, don't we? Right then, that's the end of the podcast. Hope you enjoyed that little bit of culture at the end as well. Something for everyone today, Hutchie. We've got Fleetwood, we've got the Batman, and we've got the culture and best pictures we've ever seen in Italy or elsewhere. So fantastic. Anything else to mention, Hutchie, before we take our leave?
I've got nothing else to mention. So much
Super.
culture.
So much culture. Right then. A reminder then, please, to support our sponsors, Manscaped. It seems wrong going from the Duomo and the Last Supper and the
No.
Night's Watch to Manscaped.
Perfect. Mate, those sculptures are so well manscaped.
They are, to be fair.
I don't know
Yeah.
how they were doing it. I don't know if it was like the lawnmower 0.0 was around in those days, but statue wise,
Yeah.
they're pretty well groomed.
They're well trimmed, aren't they, those boys?
Mm.
So yeah, if you want to get involved and look like a statue, use the code KOA at manscaped.com for 20% off and free delivery on all their excellent gear that they've got there. And also support us on social media, Kings of Anger on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And also leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. That helps more people discover us in the chart for our heady mix of football, culture, and film reviews. Friends, hopefully you'll have a great start to the week. If you're going to the game tomorrow, I know a lot of you are, have a great time. Hopefully Town get the result, and we'll be back to talk about it later on this week.